With us in the Frank Anderson studios is Chris Curtis. And I have to admit something. Chris is one of my favorite people out here at Delta College. We go a ways back in leadership issues, governance, and those kinds of things. But Chris is one of the 8 division chairs here at Delta College. I always like to point out that there are only 8 division chairs at Delta College, and in the area there may be 300 lawyers, 300 doctors, this time of year 400 accountants, but there are only 8 division chairs at Delta College. Chris, your area is social studies?
Social science, correct.
Social science. Okay. What is social science?
Well, we comprise 7 different disciplines: child development, criminal justice, economics, history, political science, psychology, and sociology. And that makes up the bulk of social science. We also do have a few special interest classes, what we call our social science interdisciplinary studies, which we use for a variety of both interdisciplinary with other divisions on campus, or some of our special interests that might arise that are topically driven, issues in the news, perhaps terrorism in the news, or many years ago when the Da Vinci Code was very hot, we had a class, a history class, that looked at the actual history of that. But the primary academic divisions are the first 7 that I mentioned.
Okay. Give me an example of an interdisciplinary collaboration.
Sure. One of our big ones that we are doing right now is with the Humanities Division, and in fact this summer we're offering 2 humanities projects with the new Humanities Learning Center that Laura Dull in our history department has chaired. One is a youth camp that would be running in mid-July. July 15th is when that starts. And we are offering area high school students and middle school students the opportunity to come out here and participate in a variety of classes, some in the more traditional social science area, some in philosophy, arts, looking at the importance of the humanities.
Now hold it right there. Hold it right there. How are you going to get, how do you get middle schoolers and high schoolers interested in philosophy first, history second? I'm stunned. How do you, in this technology-driven society that we're living in, how do you do that?
Well, we've tried to wrap it around a central theme, and one of our big themes now for this year is engaging students in terms of civility, which has been a big issue of late in many societies, not just America. And all of the courses really wrap around one central theme. And we've tried to do that with, also we will be running a humanities project for our traditional college classes that does the same thing, a variety of different courses all wrapped around a central theme. And both for middle school students and for traditional college-age students, really being able to see how that theme applies to multiple areas, I think, is usually the hook. So students really get the opportunity to explore not so much history, but here's how I do this idea. And by the way, it happens to be history and economics and art. And so we really look at the central theme as opposed to this isn't a history class, this is a topic that branches out into several different areas.
What careers are there in social science, stemming from social science? And I asked the question in the context of the great push, as you know, is in the STEM area, science, technology, engineering, and math.
Correct.
And I see a lot of literature about the demand is this great, the supply is very small. What careers are there? Why do, I guess one way of putting the question is, why do the social science classes have all the students?
Well, I like to think it's because we're the best, but I know that I'm biased in that regard. Clearly, all of those areas in STEM, even if you are just a die-hard engineering person or a math person, you need to be able to communicate those ideas with other people. You need to be able to relate in a team manner to solve the big projects. There's always the genius who solve something on his or her own, but even that genius needs to share those ideas at some point with the larger body or get some team to help share those ideas. And a lot of our focus in helping STEM is really helping with those team activities in interpersonal dynamics, in understanding also how these, to tie it back into what we were talking about with the Humanities Learning Center, how many times these tie in with broad cultural themes of science, technology, engineering, and math certainly is important, and it also supports very big political ideas. It can support very large humanitarian ideas along the lines of psychology, my field, and many of the big driving discoveries in psychology now have a science technology background, but clearly there's a human focus to that outcome, which is making people better.
Okay. So it's not a us versus them, it's a collaboration.
Absolutely. In fact, many of our social science classes, particularly sociology and psychology, the scientific method is one of the core concepts that we teach. So even though we're not a traditional science field in many ways, we're absolutely science-based. So there's absolutely an overlap in those.
What are the careers? I mean, it sounds like, unlike much of the STEM curriculum, you're going to have to take your social science someplace else and to begin to pursue the careers in social science.
Correct. And some of our programs are clearly designed to feed four-year institution transfer students, but we also have a lot of career opportunities straight out of Delta. Child development has educational paraprofessionals and in-home daycare and also daycare facilities. Criminal justice is a very large occupational area, and we have students who are going into law enforcement, going into corrections, going into what typically has been shown as CSI types of things, but really looking at what really happens in those, not the Hollywood approach, but here's what goes into finding the forensics of computer malfeasance or something along those lines. And then also we have the Youth Services Certificate out of Sociology, looking at social work opportunities, which is clearly a demand in our area. There are always going to be needs for families and children to be able to work better, and that's become one of our big focus areas in social science.
You're a parent.
I am.
Okay. What is in your mind, and I want to speak to the young parents out there, to stimulate an interest or exposure for children, and I'm talking elementary age, in the social sciences?
Well, there was an interesting quote by Carl Sagan who said that every child is born a scientist, a social scientist, and our goal is to keep that going, to not drive that out of it. He was using it in kind of a lamenting tone of, and then we beat it out of that student as they age. I don't think it's that difficult to do that. The optimistic part of that Carl Sagan quote, who was a very optimistic man, was that all of us have that natural instinct, and really the best thing you can do is allow your child to ask those types of questions of, why would that man get angry right now? Or why is this an important person? We have Women's History Month going on right now at the college, and if you have a student who's brought out to the college, a young student, elementary, middle school age student, we have posters all over the campus of famous women in history. They're going to ask the question, why is this woman here? Let them ask the question, and if you don't know the answer, that's the perfect opportunity to show, here's how you go and get the answer. And I think most children are naturally inquisitive that way, and our goal is to just not stifle that, to explore with them. Many of us, myself included, don't know the answers all the time, and finding the answer is the biggest part of social science, in my opinion. We have lots and lots of questions, and social science is really learning how to find the answers to those questions of what drives human behavior, what's a force in history, what drives economics, and so forth.
Well, Chris, you've just blown the biggest idea I had, which was historians are made and not born. but you have now caused me to believe that maybe they are born and perhaps made better.
I think that's a good way to describe it.
Later on, Chris Curtis, I appreciate you coming in and sharing all that great wealth of knowledge with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the time. I appreciate it, Earl.